Hi, this is Scott Garibay, and today we're going to talk about Andrew Yang, and specifically what angle of skirmish he should have ready for the September ABC Houston debate. Okay, and basically what this is Andrew Yang is about to go hunting. And basically he's going to have an angle of skirmish ready for every single opponent on that debate stage. There's going to be 9 other opponents, and he's got to have a quiver filled with arrows, specific types of arrows, different arrows for each opponent, right? And he's got to be ready. Now why do I know this, right? I can hear you already. You're like, "Oh, Scott, hey, Andrew Yang should not engage in attack politics," right? So first of all, I hear you. I understand where you're coming from. And every single angle, every single individual custom angle of skirmish that I prepared for each one of these candidates, right? For each opponent, these will only be unpacked if Andrew Yang is attacked by that opponent, right? So I hear you. I agree with you. I think we don't want Andrew Yang to attack any. We don't want Andrew Yang to attack any opponent on the stage. Let's talk about UBI. Let's talk about beating automation. Let's talk about humanity first. Let's talk about the awesome policies that Andrew Yang. Let's have his perspective on climate change. Let's have his perspective on education. All of it, right? Like I would love it if we could just get through this debate and just talk about policy and what each candidate is going to do. But I know that ain't going to happen. You know how I know that isn't going to happen? Because it hasn't happened for any debate I've ever seen in my lifetime, right? There is always attacks, and we've certainly seen it in the 2020s, right? I doubt even 5 minutes went in a single debate where there wasn't an attack thrown from one opponent to another. So the odds are people are going to attack Andrew Yang, and he needs to have an angle of skirmish, a custom arrow ready for each opponent, political arrow, okay? All right, so let's talk about this a little bit. All right, so one, he's got to fill the quiver. So let's talk about that idea, right? So I am of the Mattaponi tribe. I'm Native American. On my mother's side, my grandmother's home was like less than a mile off of where the reservation is in Virginia, and so in order to kind of get to my culture a bit more. There was a point where me and my oldest daughter learned archery. I'll give you a little advice about archery. If you ever get into archery, go recurve. Recurves are intuitive and powerful and useful and affordable. Compound bows are finicky, annoying, and expensive, right? I did not like compound bows. I love recurve bows, right? Now, we did only target shooting, right? I have never hunted. I have never killed an animal, and the reason why is Whole Foods is right over there, right? However, when me and my daughter learned how to shoot archery, right, we did about 2-year study on this topic, and we shot, we became pretty skilled at it, right? One of the things we did was we were taught by our teacher, who was an avid hunter, all about what was used to hunt, right? There's 4 different types of arrows, arrowheads for hunting, right? There's field arrows. These are very versatile, right? They are, the point on a field arrow is like what a pencil looks like, okay? It's like a pencil point, right? And then there are blunts. Now, a blunt is a blunt-tipped arrow, and you use these for small game, right? It's all you need for a squirrel or for like a wren, like a bird, right? And the reason why you use a blunt to take care of that type of animal is there's no reason to use something that's sharp that could really harm someone if all you need is a blunt arrow, right? So it reduces risk for hunting, right? And when you're hunting, you need to be incredibly cautious. Same thing for Andrew Yang. He's going hunting. We know there's going to be attack politics used on that stage, right? So he needs to have an angle of skirmish, right? For custom, prepared for each and every opponent, right? So there are blunts, right? Next, there are, and then after that, there are broadheads. Broadheads are 4 large, sharp razors. These things are used to bring down bears, right? Like boars, that kind of, big game, right? And last, there are grabbers, right? Now, what the heck is a grabber ahead, right? Oh, I'm sorry. Actually, there's two more. So there's grabbers. Now, grabbers are actually, they're not used to hunt anything, right? Actually, what they're used for is to practice, right? So if you're out in the field and there's fog conditions, it's dark, that kind of thing, you can practice shooting an arrow in your area that you're hunting in, and a grabber arrow will hit the ground and it will stand up, right? It makes the arrow really easy to find, right? And so these are like for practicing. They're not even used to really take down animals at all. But if you need to know how far your arrows are going to go, what your sighting is, all that kind of stuff, you need these grabber arrows, right? And then last, there are fishing arrows. There are arrows that are specifically used to fire into the water, right? And of course, you would tie a string to them, and then you just pull the fish out, right? So these are 5 different types of arrows for 5 different types of prey, right? Predator and prey, right? Yeah. All right. So Andrew Yang needs custom arrows for each opponent, right? Political arrows, right? All right. So let's talk it through now. Why did I take the time today to actually think of a custom approach for every single candidate, right? Well, the reason why is angle of skirmish. Responding to attack politics is incredibly dangerous, incredibly difficult, right? So one of the things you need to think about is what is an appropriate angle of skirmish. It's not easy, okay? So let's tick them off, right? One of the things is when you go for an angle of skirmish, it should be recent, right? Don't go back 2-3 decades to get something for somebody. It makes you look desperate, right? Like it's just a bad idea, right? Honestly, I think Gillibrand did a good Gillibrand in the last election talked about articles Biden had written 20-30 years ago. I was like, come on, are you kidding? Right? It should address what the candidate does most, right? Don't take one or two incidents that the person had. If they do something 1,000 times and they do something 3 times, talk about the thing they've done 1,000 times, right? Don't take your angle of skirmish at things that are exceptions within their behavior, right? It should be absolutely impersonal, right? And what do I mean by this? Well, like you can't say, Beto, I don't like your face, right? You can't say that, right? It needs to be impersonal. It can't be about them. It has to be about their policies, their political stance, their political performance, right? That's very important. And then last, it needs to be isolated, right? When you take an angle of skirmish on somebody, it needs to be isolated to them, right? Perfect example of someone who broke this rule was Harris, right? Harris came after Biden in the first election, and that was not an isolated attack, right? She attacked, so Harris attacked Biden specifically on an issue that Barack Obama had already vetted Biden on, had already co-signed Biden on, right? Obama came in and said, Biden, Barack Obama came in and said, did this in 2008, did this in 2012, came in and said, hey, Biden, I've looked at your history, I've seen what you've done on this issue, it's fine. I think you're going to be a great president, right? Excuse me. Then Harris comes along and says, that's not acceptable, right? When Harris attacked Biden on this issue, she didn't just attack Biden. She attacked Barack Obama and said, you can't vet. You don't know what you're doing. You're not a competent politician, right? You can't roll up on Obama like that. You cannot, right? Obama has a long line of detractors on the right and in the conservative field that are doing everything they can to destroy his legacy. Democrats cannot be in that business. Your angle of skirmish must be isolated, all right? So we talked about filling your quiver. We've talked about how you construct an appropriate angle of skirmish, right? By the way, why do I keep saying angle of skirmish, right? Well, in this election, this needs to be skirmish level, not battle level, right? Skirmish level because it's all Democrats. You can't pull out all your political daggers, right? You can't stab for the heart. It's all, and the reason why is this is like sparring, right? This isn't full contact, right? And the reason why is you can't cut too deep because these are your allies, right? You're going to be dealing with these people later when you become president. These people might be in your candidate. Actually, with Andrew Yang, these people might be in the Oval Office sitting and discussing how to get things done, right? So you can't cut too deep, right? You got to wait. You got to save the full contact karate for the general, right? That's a fact, all right? You got to save the broadheads probably for the. Well, actually, he's going to use some broadheads because there's some bears in the Fast Five. So let's talk them through. All right, let's tick them off. All right. So Biden. Okay, here's the angle of skirmish on a Biden. Where were you? All right, you're here in 2020. Where are you in 2016? Right? You finished with Obama. Right? Everything you're saying today that you want to do for America, why didn't you want to do it in 2016? Right? If you want to save us from Trump, you're coming to do a job you're 4 years too late for. Leave. Right? If you were serious about this, if you wanted to do this, you would have done it in 2016 and you could have saved this country a huge headache. Right? So that's solid. That's genuine from Andrew Yang. He could take that angle of skirmish with Biden. It's specific to Biden. It's recent, right? Like, I think it's a really good way to go. Let's talk about Sanders, right? With Sanders, he could say, you know what? I've listened to you, Bernie. I've listened to you in 2016, and I've listened to you in 2020. And you know what I know when I listen to you? I know what you're against. I know you're against wealth. I know you're against big energy. I know you're against big pharma, right? I know you're against, capitalism, right? But I, for the life of me, can't remember what you're for, because every time I hear you talking, you're talking about what you're against. And this country needs somebody who's talking about what they're for. Done, right? Like they're Sanders, right? All right. Warren, go right at her on the tech issue. She has said, I will break up Amazon, I will break up Facebook. This is a very, very bad idea, and it's incredibly arbitrary. So call out that her wanting to break up the big tech companies is very arbitrary. Disney is absolutely dominating entertainment. She's never threatened to break up Disney. And the other issue is Netflix, right? Disney Plus is about to come out. I think Netflix is in real trouble. I think Netflix hires well over 10,000 employees, right? They have a huge, and they're really good jobs, right? Netflix is in serious trouble. I think Netflix is going to have a lot of trouble in the next couple of years. And honestly, when you are in tech, the world changes so fast. You don't need the government coming for you. I know this sounds like unlikely, but I truly believe Amazon or Facebook, who Elizabeth Warren wants to crack apart like Kit Kat bars, right? They're just one 25-year-old genius startup person and a good idea away from getting pushed out of business. That's all it takes, right? When you're in tech, it is incredibly tenuous, right? All right, yeah, so just go straight at her on that issue because she's wrong on it and she's vulnerable on it, right? All right, Andrew Yang, what does he say to Kamala Harris? All right, Kamala, right? Every single person on this platform, or, Senator Harris, let's be respectful, right? Senator Harris, every single person on this platform is talking about prison reform, right? We are all concerned with justice and how justice is done in America. You spent your career filling prisons. How can you stand with anyone here and talk about a very large issue that you are frankly part of the problem and have been for a long time, right? She's a super aggressive prosecutor, right? She was a super aggressive prosecutor, right? And it's the most of her behavior. It's not ancient history, and it's completely fair game, in my opinion, right? Strong position. All right, that's the Fast Five, okay? And Andrew Yang's in there, but he's not gonna have an angle skirmish for himself, right? All right, so let's talk about the slow five, right? All right, Beto, you're a knob turner, right? So what is a knob turner? Well, Andrew Yang could say, listen, if I get in, I change the whole system, baby. That's what UBI is, right? It's innovative. It actually changes the system at the system level, right? That guy over there, Sanders, right? He don't like capitalism. He will absolutely change the system as well, right? Both of us, we are system changers, right? You are a knob turner. Your policies are such small tweaks that you're going to get in, you're going to leave the system in place, and you're going to turn the knobs a little bit. And you know what? America doesn't need a knob turner right now. It really doesn't. Booker, right? You are, I think what Andrew Yang should say to Booker is, you are an intelligent, I've watched you coming out here in 2020. I've heard everything you have to say, and here's the issue. You're a strong candidate. You're a smart person, but the reality is nothing you're saying is unique. Nothing you're saying is innovative. And honestly, I can't remember a single thing you've said that's self-generated, right? That's innovative, unique, or self-generated, right? And that's the issue, right? Like, when you look at, and Yang doesn't have to say this, but when you look at Yang, he's unique. Like, UBI, for UBI and against automation, ain't nobody talking about that stuff, right? Maybe there was people, actually, there were people who talked about UBI in the past, but they weren't pairing it with a hatred of robots, right? Like, that is truly, truly unique. All right. So, Pete Buttigieg, honestly, you shouldn't even be here, buddy. Like, go back to South Bend. You got unfinished business. Seriously, you have no business in this presidential election because South Bend has been abandoned. Those people need you, right? Come back in 2024 when you are no longer mayor. You should have quit that job. The fact that you are still mayor in South Bend and that place is falling apart is your fault, and you need to go back and handle your business, right? All right, Julian Castro, all right? You want to decriminalize the border crossing. Bad idea, right? And Andrew Yang could say, I will do a very careful job, right? I will treat every person who is migrating to the U.S. with respect. We will make sure that they are safe, right? But no one is going to come into this nation illegally, and we're going to act like they returned a library book, like they returned a library book late. We take the borders in this country seriously, right? I think this is a great way for Andrew Yang to distinguish himself, to make it clear that he's going to make the situation of immigrants, much better. At the same time, he actually secures our borders, right? Which actually speaks out to Trump voters. It's a big deal, and they care about it a lot, right? All right, this is my favorite one, okay? Amy Klobuchar. What does Andrew Yang say about Amy Klobuchar? I love this one. All right, I have this really unique angle of Skirmish to use on Amy Klobuchar. So one, Amy Klobuchar, he doesn't really need the angle of Skirmish on Amy Klobuchar. The reason why is Amy Klobuchar is fully defeated already. She just doesn't know it. The reality is, I think Elizabeth Warren is doing everything that Amy Klobuchar does better, right? She's a redundant candidate, right? So the reality is, and Andrew Yang doesn't need to deal with Amy Klobuchar. So what does he use his angle of Skirmish for her for? Well, I'm really been thinking about this a lot, right? And Trump is he has done so much damage to the presidency, the role of presidency. It's incredible. However, absolutely no politician will ever be able to go without studying him in detail. He is an incredibly powerful politician. He is effective as a politician. One of the things that makes him so incredibly effective is his unpredictability, right? And I think Andrew Yang has got to put on the unpredictability cloak. He cannot forget this. Unpredictability gives Trump so much power that no politician going forward is going to be able to be predictable. It's a superpower, right? So Andrew Yang is going to start putting on with this angle of Skirmish on Amy Klobuchar. He's going to start putting on the cloak of unpredictability. All right, let's talk about it. Amy Klobuchar came out recently and she made a law called the Safe Freight Act. Safe Freight Act. This is about trains that haul freight cars, right? And she came out strong on the Safe Freight Act and said every freight train needs a qualified conductor and a qualified engineer. It's important, right? And I was like, why on earth did she take the time to make legislation for railroads? Like that, like who cares about railroads? Like these things are barely operating anymore. Like it's a dying industry. America is not getting any new fast rails. They just failed to build a super fast rail in California, right? So I think Andrew Yang should come out hard against the Safe Freight Act. And like I said that he shouldn't cut deep. He should act like he cares deeply and passionately about the Safe Freight Act and come out hard against Amy Klobuchar on the Safe Freight Act and be like, I can't believe, right, that Amy Klobuchar is requiring that there be a qualified conductor and a qualified engineer on every freight car. These freight cars have been able to, we have freight in these things. And that those railroad companies are trying their best. So to bring down heavy regulation on these freight cars, I really think it's just terrible. And I can't believe Amy Klobuchar would take this nation down a road where we have this heavy of regulation on railroad freight cars, right? And why would he say this? Because no one will understand what he's saying, right? He could just be like, people are like, what? Why did he come out against safe freight cars, right? Like, and it's unpredictable. And I'm convinced. I'm so convinced. You cannot sleep on Trump. He is incredibly dangerous, and his unpredictability must be taken up by every politician going forward, right? You have to have an ability to say things that nobody expected. And coming out hard against Amy Klobuchar on the Safe Freight Car Act is not expected. And it's safe. Nobody cares about it, right? And it was just surprise people. It puts the media on their back foot. And you got to do this. You got to control the media. And Trump does it, right? That is a custom angle of skirmish for every single opponent, right? That is a filled quiver, right? Field heads, blunt heads, grabber heads, fishing heads, broad heads, right? It's time to get ready to hunt with political arrows, right? And I am leaving this here for Andrew Yang and his team in case the custom angle of skirmish that I built is better from the perspective of being impersonal, isolated, recent, dealing with most of their behavior, right? I'm going to leave this here in case they need to use any of them. All that is my opinion and material I've built for Andrew Yang and his team. I'd love to hear your opinion. Do you think there's a better angle of skirmish on any of these opponents? Let me know in the comments below. Please consider liking and subscribing, and have a wonderful millennium.